Hello, and welcome to Tech 5, 5 technology stories that I think you should know about. Who am I? I'm Sean Thuris, a software developer in the San Francisco Bay Area, where I run a small technology consultancy. Story number 1, the Las Vegas Loop. One of the lesser-known companies that Elon Musk has started is the Boring Company. That is, they bore through the ground. And they've designed a network of tunnels, which at this point is just a tunnel, under the Las Vegas Strip to allow people to get back and forth between casinos and the convention center easily. This is the central station for the convention center, and they'll have a total of 29 stations and 51 miles of tunnels. The transportation will be by Tesla. So as you can see here, it's a one-way loop. Call a car, you get in. At the moment, there's a human driver. You drive through the tunnel, you get out at the next stop, and they go 35 miles an hour. Nothing really exotic or exciting, except that if you're walking around Las Vegas and it's 115 degrees Fahrenheit, you appreciate the chance to get to the next stop a few blocks away for $5. Here's a map of the whole thing, the whole system, once it's complete, which should be in, I think, 5 years or so. And there's mention here of the kind of profits that they look to be making. Because it's a very simple system, these are just rather small tunnels, so they don't require the sort of support that a large, say, train tunnel would. And inside the tunnel, just some colored lights. So rather than having to run lots of high voltage cables and so on that you would have to do for a subway network, it's just basically a surface that Teslas can drive on easily. And there's the estimate that they could be getting up to a 42% gross margin once everything is done and the whole network is busy, because the marginal cost to drive a passenger from one casino to the next is very, very small. And if each ride is $5 or $10 or more, that could translate into up to $1 billion a year in profit. And here's an article about it. There's something that's not mentioned in any of these articles, but I did see elsewhere, is that for the stations underneath each casino, the casinos will be providing the decor so that it will be themed consistently with the branding of the casino and their image, which saves the Boring Company lots of money and ensures that the stations will be interesting to look at. Story number 2. The Jetson One. This is a Swedish company that's produced basically a drone that you sit in. And these are going to be $92,000. Here you see it at work. It's all electric. And the company discusses it here. It's going to be delivered to the customer in a kit form. So the frame will be all welded together, and then you basically bolt on the various other parts. You have to add a battery, literally battery not included for this. And they say that they're going to be very cautious about their first customers because a disaster could be a disaster for the company as well. It reminds me of the Ariel Atom. I hope this is turned down enough.
Because they're a lot more manageable even when they're cold.
This little car. So it says the 190-pound aircraft lasts only about 20 minutes in the air. Because the craft is classified as an ultralight, it's not necessary to have a pilot's license to fly it, although that might be a good idea. And the CEO mentions that he's going to be looking for people who seem like safe bets as first customers. And It does mention here that Jetson Aero is one of the many startups betting on the growing interest in electric VTOLs, or electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles. But most of the other companies are developing large multi-seat urban air taxis, and this is something very different. Story number 3, Netflix enters gaming. Netflix, about a month ago, hired Mike Verdu, who was an executive at a video game company. And he gives this statement saying that Netflix is going to be offering games to their customers. They'll be mobile games. And the games, as far as I can tell, are based on properties that Netflix owns. So they have more than one Stranger Things game and so on. The other aspect of Netflix's sort of push into gaming is here. So Riot Games makes League of Legends, which is a big video game. Netflix produced an animated series called Arcane, and they had streamers live stream the episode at the same time that the episode was available on Netflix. This was a sort of a peculiar thing. Usually an entertainment company would not want you to stream their streamed entertainment. So unlike Google's game streaming service, this is not a game streaming service. This is a game. These are games offered to customers of a streaming service. So you can go into the iOS or Android store, find the apps, download them, and you log into them with your Netflix identity, and then you can play them. It's not really clear whether this is going to go beyond these sort of somewhat simple games that they've done so far. We will have to see. So the Harvard Business Review published this opinion piece that gaming isn't Netflix's best opportunity for growth. And the long and short of this essay is that Netflix would be better off doubling down on the things that it already has and does. So, for example, behind the scenes and sort of further exploration of things that people have shown that they want. So, for example, he says everyone was watching Squid Game and then they didn't have any sort of follow-up to that except to talk about it or watch it again. But if Netflix had provided more sort of behind the scenes and discussion content, that would make more sense than for Netflix to offer a game that you can download related to that intellectual property. I don't know if I believe that, but because the games are offered free to subscribers to Netflix, you have to wonder whether they're introducing these games as a way to possibly raise the price yet again. And while we're on the subject of gaming, I'll follow up on a story that I covered a couple of weeks ago, which is the Prime Gaming benefit, just to let you know that if you're interested at all, you might want to get in there and get Rise of the Tomb Raider, Control Ultimate, and Dragon Age Inquisition. I think this is an unusually good month for these the free games that are offered through Amazon Prime. Story number 4, the chip shortage. So the CEO of ARM, a company that we discussed a couple of weeks ago in connection with NVIDIA attempting to acquire ARM, gave a talk this week where he said, if you're looking to buy anything electronic for Christmas, you probably should have done so already. And something that I thought was especially interesting, he said, when the pandemic started, lots of companies reacted very quickly. They stopped the production of things that they didn't think people were going to need. And cars were actually one of them. All the chip supplies were focused on the things that people really needed. Communication devices that allowed us to work from home, allow homeschooling to happen, and keep talking with our families. They had no idea when demand for cars, for example, would restart. And apparently they miscalculated. The CEO of a semiconductor company called Canaron said that the biggest culprit is a surge of demand from the North American market. When people started buying cars again, some automakers, frustrated that they couldn't get delivery of chips, started placing duplicate orders in order to get priority. This created a significant issue to plan production. Fabs take a long time to retool production lines from one product to another. And then, of course, the freight problems. TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation, which is one of the two biggest silicon fabricators alongside Global Foundries, which doesn't come into the news this week, but is still going full steam ahead. TSMC is going to build a fab in Japan in cooperation with Sony. They're going to be using the 22 and 28 nanometer technologies. And what that means is when a silicon wafer is essentially printed with a semiconductor design, those features that the lens can focus on and the distance between them, over time it's gotten smaller. So as with the optics from Zeiss and so on, they've been able to make smaller and smaller features. So 20 years ago, the sort of cutting edge was 130 nanometers. So 130 nanometers from the middle of one basically block to the next. And then 10 years ago, this was down to 28 or 22 nanometers. Now it's down to 10 or 7, coming up on 5 for some Apple products. In any case, it's not exactly cutting edge now, but it's still capable of producing the kinds of circuits that you might use, the kind of logic chips that you might use in devices around the house. So that's going to be built in Kumamoto, and there's another article about it here saying that it should come online in late 2024. TSMC is also beginning to build a fab in Arizona, and this is going to be on its very latest 5 nanometer node, as they call it. Well, at the same time, Intel already has chip fabrication plants in Arizona, and they're building 2 more. The sort of odd thing about this is that chip fabrication requires a lot of water. So this is definitely, there's definitely a trade-off for the people of Arizona here. Jobs in exchange for a lot of water, of which they don't have a surplus. So, but, you know, as these chips are essential to the conduct of modern life, they have to be built somewhere. Though you might say you could find a place with more rain than Arizona to do that. All right, story number 5, the world's brightest X-rays. So a new imaging technique utilizing X-rays generated by a particle accelerator offers 3D images of whole organs in unprecedented detail, down to 1 micron. That's 100 times the resolution of a CT scan, a conventional CT scan. So the European Synchrotron Research Facility introduced a new accelerator, and they realized when they did this, based on imaging that they were doing of fossils, they could do this for medical purposes. The extremely brilliant source upgrade, these were 100 billion times brighter X-rays than those found in a conventional hospital X-ray, which of course I think means, they don't say it here, but I think that means this isn't something that could be used on live patients unless you want them to stop being alive. But anyway, they've put up this website called the Human Organ Atlas here, where you can see you can go into further detail and see some of these extreme close-up images. And finally, on this topic, they were able to show that the blood vessels in a COVID patient's lung, someone who had died, had basically connected to one another in a way that prevented the proper blood oxygenation. And this is something that they wouldn't have been able to do with regular existing imaging equipment. So that's the 5 stories for the week. Thank you for being here and staying to the end, and I will see you next time.